Welcome to the Downtown Den this morning, and I'm joined by the Chief Executive of the Liverpool City Region Local Enterprise Partnership, Mark Basnett. Mark and I were just having a moan about football because we're both Evertonians. We may return to that subject later, depending on how the conversation goes and what mood we find ourselves in. Mark, great to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
And I just wanted to start by saying that I think the last time we had a live event, we were talking about the establishment of the growth company, Growth Hub, for the LEP. And I know that the plans have continued. There's been progress made. So tell us where that's up to.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Good morning, folks, and good to be online with you. We probably picked the right time to set it up, to be honest, Frank, given everything that's happened, because the whole idea of Growth Platform is to try and pull together, integrate, simplify the business support landscape, because I'm sure businesses on this call will know it's far too complex. Government's helped make it even more complex over the course of the last 6-8 months. The number of schemes that are out there is just, it's mind-bending. I was doing a bit of prep for this morning, Frank, and you just go crazy trying to make sense of every scheme that's out there and trying to determine which business that they'd be eligible for. So the whole point of Growth Platform is to try and bring together resources to make that simpler. So engage with government. We work very closely with Mick Allen and the government team based in Manchester to make sure we've got all the government schemes on the system, all the local schemes, working with all the local delivery partners. So the idea of Growth Platform is just to integrate and simplify the business support landscape. So, Steve Rotherham kind of refers it to as a one-stop shop. It's not quite that, because we're not here to replace or compete with the likes of the great stuff you do, Frank, with Downtown and the Chambers and FSB and other business support organisations. We want it to be so wherever any business engages with support, whether it's with you guys or Chambers or whatever, that you're part of an ecosystem, because we all are part of this City Region's business support ecosystem. And our ethos has been to join that up better. There's still loads to do. So what have we done in the last 6, it's probably getting on for 9-12 months since we actually spoke to we've got a team in place normally in Man Island, now completely working remotely, just occasionally in Man Island, and we've got a sort of contract arrangement with a wide range of providers. So that basically it means that wherever you are in the city region, whether it's through the local authority or a chamber or whatever, if you're a business looking to understand what's available, you can either go online to the website, or you can just pick the phone up and someone will talk to you about what's available. So look, in the last 6 months, the demand for that service has just gone through the roof. We've supported 6,000 businesses over the course of the last 6 or 7 months, 10,000 different interventions with those businesses. Sometimes, listen, in March and April, it was just businesses ringing up to wanting someone to talk to and say, well, Christ, how am I going to cope? Directing them to what funding was available, trying to make sense of the business support landscape. And a little bit of that's happened again in the sort of this second wave, so that inquiry levels have gone back up again. So listen, we're still very much on track. We've not been blown off course by COVID. If anything, as I said, the sense of having a growth company for the city region that pulls together all the multiple different resources and helps each refer to the other is still, in our view, the right thing to do. Still backed by the CA. Government's been putting money into that model as well. Not huge amounts of money. I've introduced a few programs that we've administered. A lot of the grant administration, and we'll probably come on to that later, has been through local authorities because they're geared up with revs and bends, folks who can get the money out the door to businesses. but we work very closely with them. So we're kind of what we intended to be in that business support space, the joiner up, the coordinator, facilitator of everything, trying to make sense of the landscape, but still conscious there's a lot still to do.
It's frustrating though, Mark, isn't it? Because obviously when the discussions were taking place, and we were very involved in the initial consultations and discussions as well, it was very much aimed at, let's go for growth. You know, the city region's in a good place. There's lots of businesses out there with aspiration, ambition. We could see the potential and opportunity. And really, what the growth platform was about was that springboard for future success. And all of a sudden, you've had to change tack, really, divert your attention. And now it's about saving businesses rather than growing businesses, sadly.
Yeah, it's a good point, Frank. Yeah, it's both, to be honest. I mean, obviously, a lot of our focus has been on those that have been worst affected. So clearly, hospitality, leisure, retail, those that have been either forced to close, or their business has been decimated, and the supply chain to those, you know, from taxi drivers through to, you know, suppliers of you know, catering equipment or food supply, whatever, the whole raft. You know, our focus has been on trying to support those businesses and keeping them alive. Our view has been, and it's a view that's been embedded within the combined authority, is it's much better to keep those businesses going rather than have to then restart businesses in 12 months' time. Let's keep as many of those businesses, even if they have to be kind of hibernated a little bit for a period, so that those businesses are saved. Because if you have to start from scratch, it takes longer, and it'll dent our capacities for recovery. But the interesting thing, you know, whilst, you know, we've seen a big drop in our economy, and some businesses have been the brunt, and we've been kind of on the front line with government to try and make sure they get the right resource. There have been a good number of businesses, you know, there may be some, you know, on this session, that have actually done pretty well. You see probably 30–40% of businesses have had a nightmare. You know, maybe 30%, 40% are kind of just about getting by and ticking over. But there's probably 20–25% who actually have seen some opportunities. You've always got opportunities. A crisis, you know, it's never waste a good crisis for lots of reasons. And you are seeing a lot of entrepreneurialism. You must, you know, you have a lot of businesses that are kind of on that leading edge of creativity and entrepreneurship. I've always thought, Frank, you've always been good at bringing those businesses around you. There's a lot of businesses in that space looking at the next thing, changing things, and so some of our resources and some of the combined authorities' resources have still been around trying to encourage future growth or innovation, or look to recovery, you know, beyond survival. But you're right, that we kind of re-engineered the business in March pretty quickly, A, to work from home, but B, to ensure that every bit of resource that was available to support businesses to get through it was available. And particularly given the scale of things needed to support businesses across the city region is in the billions. We've already seen over 2 billion has gone into local businesses, whether that's through furlough, CBILS, bounce back loans, the grants or what have you. It was always way beyond what local authorities or the combined authority could do itself. So the challenge has always been, how do we help our businesses get maximum access to that funding and make sure government provides as level a playing field as possible. And we may come on to the interesting time we had during October, where there was a bit of toing and froing going with government, which I'm sure you were well cited on. But for the most part, it has been largely a level playing field, apart from sort of that blip. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a frustration. I mean, you know, look, we're fortunate. We've, you know, I remind our staff on a weekly basis that, you know, we've got our jobs. We've lost 1 or 2 people, but for the most part, we've got our jobs. We've got our livelihoods. We can pay our way and everything. But lots of our customers out there don't have that, you know, security and certainty. So the focus has been listening, being in ear and trying to make sure that any business out there who doesn't know what to do, doesn't know what support they can get, there's someone they can talk to, who'll listen to them and just navigate them to the right support. So, and it's been a privilege to do that. You kind of, it's a bit odd remotely, because we're used to, we're like you in that sense, Frank. You're very, very tactile, tangible kind of business. It's a face-to-face thing. But some of the feedback we've had from businesses, saying you've been a lifeline, that's what you get out of bed for. And the team, team have been working stupid hours, and happy to come on to that topic about leadership, fatigue and business fatigue. A lot of folks in organizations right across are really, quite wearied from it all. But I think when you get those, just people take the time to say, well, that was brilliant, so that's really helped and made a difference. It gives you that lift you need. So, so we're right in the throes of wave 2 and it's turned back to survival. But interestingly, I do think the announcements of the 2 sort of vaccines, I know they're only in stage 3 trials, and Pfizer have been jumped the gun a little bit and being very upbeat about theirs, and the one yesterday, and then there's another set of 8 or 9 I think still in stage 3 trials. I think it's just adjusted the mood a little bit. It made us think about where the future might be. I don't know if anyone heard this morning, the CEO of EasyJet was on Radio 4 this morning about 7:30. Johan Longstrom, and he was defending EasyJet's first loss in 25 years, 1.2 billion of losses to the year end to September. But he was saying on the back of those vaccine announcements in the last week, they've seen a 50% jump in bookings. So I think it has the ability to flip the mood. So, and the interesting thing, we were very much, and you guys were involved in it, Frank. We did quite a lot of consultation around recovery and recovery planning in the summertime, around May, June time, when we were all starting to think, infection rates going down, death rates going around, we need to be preparing for the future. We did an awful lot of that work. The frustrating thing is that with the second wave, that kind of went on the shelf a little bit. But I do think we're seeing some of that, chink of light, and mass testing has been important in that space as well, I think, because it gives us a sense that we can get to grips with this. We can have 15-minute tests where you rock up to a local testing center. There's no queue. 15 minutes later you get a text on your phone to say you're all clear, or you need to isolate, or whatever. All of that starts the process of thinking, well, there is a way forward, we can get out of this. So
I think there is some optimism. I think last week you had the result from America, which I think a lot of people welcomed, although we're not sure whether he's conceded yet. I haven't checked CNN today. Then you had obviously the news of the vaccine, and I won't mention what went on in number 10. Some people were pleased about some of the moves there as well. So I thought it was quite a positive week, and there was no football at the weekend. So in terms of last week, I think you're right. There was a bit of a spring in our step, particularly with that news about the vaccine. But I just want to pick up on a couple of points that you made during that last contribution, Mark. And you mentioned about the hospitality sector and the visitor economy. And again, one of the things that you and I have often talked about is an imbalance within the city region's economy, and possibly more so in the city's economy, Liverpool's economy, because the figure of 48% business rates coming from that part of our business community, I think probably surprised some people. Even I wasn't anticipating that it was going to be so high. And I think as I say, we've been talking about for a while, which is we do need to diverse the economy. And I think the recovery plan that we've come up with, actually start to deliver on some of that?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? We've lauded the success of
Yeah.
the visitor economy, and it has. It's an amazing, the city in particular. And it's not just the city, but as you say, the concentrations, no question, it's there. It is phenomenal, the offer that's been created there by that sector. But and year on year, it's seen growth and record numbers of visitors and what have you. And it is brilliant, and it's an important part of growth. That has been one of the largest contributors to the city region's growth in the last 10 years. And it's been great. But unfortunately, you're right, it's meant we've been disproportionately dependent and affected by the social, distancing restrictions, with the sort of 2 national lockdowns and the local tiered lockdowns. And that sector, huge. I will come on to the wider point, but that huge admiration for that sector. We hold the annual tourism awards each year.
Seen that last week, yeah.
And usually it's a great big bash in the cathedral, and everyone's glammed up, and it's a bit wild and raucous. And well, I think you've been to a few of those after show parties from
Just one or two.
Just one or two. Well, we couldn't do it this year for obvious reasons, but we held it. We used the MSP studios, and we got Jay Hines to front it and what have you. We did it online last week. And it was phenomenal. We wondered whether we should even do it at all, because so many of those businesses and individuals have been really, in a difficult place. But the industry said, no, we want you to do it. So we did it. The positivity and the resilience of those people, Frank, I tell you, I still get hairs on the back of my neck thinking about it. Just to see what they've come through as businesses and employees, because some of it was employees of the year and all that sort of stuff. Just phenomenal. And it's no wonder that sector has been so successful in the good years and has driven our economy, because it's made up of such fantastic people. So that was probably one of my highlights of the last few months, really, is running that event and those folks who've been in the eye of the storm, really, coming through and all saying, we'll get through this. We're determined to get through this. It's hard, but we'll sort it. Does give me huge hope for the future. But you're right on the diversification point. I think probably the most exciting sort of prospects, I think, in terms of that rebalance of particularly not just the city, but particularly the city, but the whole city region's economy, is the stuff around Paddington Village, the Hill, and all of the Knowledge Quarter. The work that the university's doing there with the city and with Colin and the Scion Tech folks, really fantastic groundbreaking opportunities, genuinely bringing the health sector, which we know is both stable currently and is going to grow, and over the course of the next 5 years, 10 years. We've got real expertise in that space, as you know, Frank, School of Tropical Medicine. We've got real global expertise in infection and vaccines. So we expect to see growth there over the course. The Royal College of Physicians, obviously, made the decision 18 months or so ago to set up their second sort of base in the UK, the only one outside of London there. So we see that as a real pole for growth. I think you see a lot of investment there from drug companies, small businesses, development will go on there. I think you'll see transport infrastructure improvements. I think that's probably the most important site. And if you think, the business district is massively improved from where it was. The retail core is brilliant. The waterfront is great. We've got so many of those components that have driven that visitor growth. The bit that's really not realised its potential is that stuff from Lime Street up the hill, and I think we'll see huge growth there. So that's going to be important. The other area that's been hit by the pandemic is manufacturing, particularly our motor industry. And listen, that's huge, a huge issue for us, because the car plants, not obviously there's Vauxhall in Ellesmere Port, which affects a lot of the city region, particularly Wirral, but then Jaguar Land Rover, the supply chain to it, so many businesses, 10,000 plus people directly affected by that. And so when they cut a shift and demand falls through the floor, then everyone's affected. So helping to strengthen and support that manufacturing base and encourage more manufacturing is another area that we've absolutely got to. But it'll be increasingly with manufacturing, and this is in the recovery plan, very much around digital manufacturing. There's no question that's the way forward. And we've got, when you look at productivity, the productivity numbers for the city region are really interesting. You've got a small number of large, very, very productive global levels of productivity business, the likes of Unilever, Jaguar Land Rover, Siemens and others. You've then got this longish tail of not very productive businesses. And the big challenge we've got is how do we support those businesses to get their levels of productivity up, because that's where the growth is going to come from. So that's one of the big challenges, and you'll see us, a lot of our focus, as you said, Frank, when we started the growth platform, it was, well, it's in the name, isn't it? It's about trying to support businesses to grow. And that still absolutely remains a priority, even if it's growing from a low base following a recession. So, that has to be our priority. And we're really keen to identify, and what the teams are working on, the kind of 1,000 businesses that have really got the potential to drive, significant growth in the city region, to understand what they need and how they can drive growth. And of course, we're going to support all businesses, but those businesses in sectors like healthcare and in digital technologies, software, manufacturing, they're the businesses, and in renewable energy, that's going to be a huge area for us in the coming years. Those are the businesses we really need to get closer to. I want us to be proactive about business support, business growth, rather than just wait for the folks who are struggling to come to you or decide to come forward. We want to engage with the businesses that have really got massive potential for growth through innovation, through export. That's what's going to take our economy forward. So that's where we see our engineering going as a business. The core of what we'll do is look for those growth businesses, whilst ensuring we support a much broader ecosystem that's there for all, a universal support level. Because picking winners is very difficult in business. If you were very good at it, then you should be in investment, shouldn't you? You should be an investment banker or running a fund or some description like that. So you have to provide a universal, because you never know where that amazing growth is going to come from. But we can, I think, be proactive to the sorts of businesses to do exactly what you talked about, doing that rebalancing by focusing on the types of businesses in the sectors where we've got real strengths and where we'll see growth in the future.
And you're absolutely right, Mark. It's about rebalancing it. And, we deal, as you know, with lots of the hospitality businesses across the city, and the hotel sector has been absolutely devastated during the past 8 or 9 months. But even before this, there was a concern within, and hotels in particular, I would say, that the city wasn't commercial enough. That corporate business during the week, the levels weren't there to sustain really successful high growth hotels. And, I'm sure that has a knock-on effect to bars, restaurants and so on. It's going to take time to get there. But I think, the eye has still got to be on that prize. And I think the other thing that you mentioned, which fits well into the hospitality sector, but I think we've seen this across the business community over the past 8 or 9 months, is that piece on business management and leadership. Because again, this is something that the Local Enterprise Partnership here has been very keen to promote. Putting, I think some great ideas together in terms of how we can develop those skills. Because again, what we know is that where you have that management and leadership that is innovative, that is visionary, then those ambitions and aspirations that they have for their businesses and we have for their businesses can actually be achieved. So again, is that work continuing, Mark, despite all the challenges that you've had?
Yeah, it is. There've been, to some extent, Frank, you coined it right you called it right at the beginning. Some of those programs that we'd geared around leadership and management, where you get really good facilitators, you get a sort of hand-picked cohort of businesses that have ambition and potential for growth, and you put them together in a kind of small learning group so that they feed off each other and they motivate each other. Because when we talk to businesses, which we do a lot, or listen to businesses, they often say that what they really value is the peer-to-peer opportunity. And so it's part of what you provide is in downtown, isn't it? Is that mixing of people, which has been a bit harder than usual in the last 6-8 months. So we've been, had a program of leadership and management development, sort of high growth sort of stuff that was all geared up, just starting to run the first few cohorts through a company called Form. I don't know if you know Matt Johnson.
Yeah,
who runs Form, used to run Mando Group. He runs some brilliant programs both in Manchester and around the country now, but also here. We ended up having to re-engineer a lot of those programs to A, online, and B, around resilience, to help businesses, with resilience, because that became the priorities to businesses survive. But that absolutely, we're looking at moving towards that high growth space again. So you'll see a number of programs around that area. We're just about to launch a range of peer-to-peer network programs, which will be in that sort of vein. But the intention is certainly as we move into next year, because I think by the time we get to March, April, I think everyone will be very firmly on this is the recovery. I can see it. You sense so much pent up, ambition and frustration that people have, just to get out, to socialize, to reinvigorate their businesses, to travel. I think there'll be a huge opportunity and a huge upswing of growth aspirations. So we're working with the combined authority right now and ensuring that there's a suite of programs around management and leadership that will be available for businesses. I mean, we, as you know, we talked, didn't we, 12 months ago about exactly that kind of thing. Yeah. So I think you'll see quite a fair bit of it, but we just had to be sensitive that you want to try and be appropriate to the needs of businesses, and going out and say, oh, we're going to run some leadership and management programs for your future growth. Are slightly insensitive when half of your audience is trying to wondering if they're going to be able to pay wages at the end of the week. Yeah, it's just been adjusting to the market, Frank. But no, that aspiration is absolutely there, and that's where I come back to that cohort. Whether it's 1,000 or it's 5, it's those businesses that have got that ambition. And the thing that I've been fortunate in my career that I've been for a good chunk of it, surrounded by really innovative and ambitious people. And that just helps you, doesn't it? So this idea of bringing cohorts together, where you see and inspired by other people and what they're doing with their business or what they've done, what their ambition is, just breaks through some of those glass ceilings. One of the frustrations I've had here is that we've got this kind of chipper kind of confidence, but I don't think we see enough businesses really breaking through and becoming national and global players. Listen, there are some, and that's not to take away from those that have done it, but we need more of those. It's those businesses that's what our city region should be about. We've Scousers are all over the world, aren't they? We've exported people, probably our best export, and loads of people have got that ambition, but we need those people to be running businesses that are based here and driving growth and saying, not being satisfied in being effective in the city region or the northwest or the north, but becoming a significant national, a significant global player. We've just taken on part of the sort of growing portfolio stuff we're taking on. We've just managed to prize some money out of DIT for someone to export manager, for us to get an export plan for the city region. Because if you look at the size and scale of our exports, for the size of our economy, they're only 50% of where they should be. For a port city region that was founded on trade, we should have above average levels of exports. We've got way below average levels of export. So we've got to get more businesses. Obviously, it's making sure the big businesses are doing everything they can from here through here. They're going to do the volume. But we need to get that tier below, those medium-sized businesses with really good products and services that are internationally tradable. We need to be working and developing them, because we need to bring that money inside rather than just creating more businesses to compete locally or compete regionally. We're not going to break through the levels of growth that we need without national and international level firms. And the best way, we're going to continue doing it with investments. I'll touch on that if you're interested, because we want to attract those sort of businesses in. But the absolute priority is to grow what we've got here, work with those who've got that ambition, have got those products. So in the recovery plan, you'll see lots of stuff around supporting innovation, fostering innovation, increasing the amount of money going into research and development, so that we really do get a suite of businesses with products and services that are internationally tradable. Just don't have enough of those, Frank. And there's not an easy quick fix to that, but the diversification that you touched on is exactly the sort of thing that we need to do, is, clustered around the likes of Cytec, Daresbury, and that's a phenomenal capability and growth pole. But also around the hill and around the universities in Liverpool. We absolutely need to invest in businesses that land on the back of that.
I'm not going to get into the Brexit debate, but I'm sure you're keeping your fingers crossed, as I am, that some sort of deal is done. But you're right, as a port city, there's some tremendous opportunities on the back of whatever comes next, and we're facing the right way potentially as well. So let's see. As I say, I don't want to get into Brexit this hour of the morning, but I think we're all watching carefully what happens with those discussions. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, of course, business, declare our hand, because we're there to, like you, to represent business. Business wants a deal. Business needs a deal to reduce tariffs, reduce any of those barriers, anything, whether it's increased paperwork or it's tariffs on products and services, anything that's a barrier potentially, can negatively impact. We are facing the right way. A few things, happened, even yesterday. We had a session with Steve and Andy Burnham, talking to the foreign minister, the Irish foreign minister, and the two ambassadors about a program of collaboration with Ireland. We think about exports being, to America or South. We think exotic, don't we? We think China, and we've got a huge export market on our doorstep in Ireland. It's our, I think something like the third or fourth biggest trading partner. Loads and loads of opportunities to do more, and I think will be our nearest, European neighbour in new arrangements. So there's a huge opportunity for collaboration there, and there's, a complete commitment for ourselves of the city region, working with Greater Manchester and with the Irish government to do something very significant over an extended number of years in that space. So that's really positive. The prospectus for Freeports was published yesterday. And we're still kind of digesting that, but working across multiple organisations with the port, combined authority, local authorities, just to explore what the opportunities of that are. But there are going to be unquestionably a lot of opportunities because of where the port is. You may have seen Felixstowe has been having all kinds of problems of late. They had problems last year, they've got problems this year. As you start to see congestion, build up, and more tariffs and controls and change in regulation will potentially really affect them. It just makes the case yet again for the port up here being this should be the port of choice for any goods, moving from the north and from the Midlands North or to the Midlands North. We should be using the port of Liverpool. So I think there's great opportunities for growth in that space. I say let's hope we get a deal that works, that gives us. We want the best of both worlds, don't we? Really, we want a deal that allows us to carry on doing all the good stuff we're doing with Europe, but frees our hands a little bit to work with everybody else. So it's let's hope we get somewhere close to that.
Yeah, I think we'll get news on that within the next couple. Well, we'll have to get news on that within the next couple of weeks. Listen, I just want to turn into the thing that's been keeping you busiest in recent months, and then I'll finish off my sort of remarks around devolution and the future of that, and go back perhaps to the discussions that we were all involved in to an extent a few weeks ago over the tiered system. But yeah, one of the things that's been pleasing for me is that Liverpool and the wider city region has often been seen as behind the curve on some of this business stuff, whether that be growth, whether it be in terms of business support. We've always held up other cities, usually the one down the other end of the M62 as the exemplar. And the pleasing thing for me, Mark, is that during this crisis, the people that we've been dealing with have been absolutely phenomenal in terms of their reaction and response. So, within the city, which is where most of our members are, those business grants were just getting doled out very, very quickly, very efficiently, way before any other city. We were just so good at doing that. And then we started to have conversations when it began to appear that we were going to have a second wave, and there was going to be, if not a lockdown, a near lockdown, about what the city and local authorities and the combined authority could do to step in and basically try and create something that filled the vacuum that was clearly starting to appear. Now, there's a double-edged sword here, and I just want to get to the bottom of this, because I think people need to be aware of where that money's come from. So combined authority stepped in and said, okay, we'll provide a chunk of cash here, £40 million, to support whatever help we get from government. But that money didn't appear off a magic bloody tree, did it, in the back garden, the town hall? That money was geared up for strategic investment funds, so some big projects that we have ambitions to deliver. Where are we in terms of, well, first of all, maybe a comment on how positive that response has been, because you've been at the centre of those conversations, but also then, Mark, what we need to do as a business community, in my opinion, to make sure that those funds are replenished moving forward.
Thanks for that. I just have to say, I've had a front row seat with the local authorities and a combined authority over, well, last 6 months, and I have to say, echo your comments and your compliments to the city. A hugely challenging, task logistically to get that grants out, and I think they've done a brilliant job in doing that right across all of our local authorities. And as you say, when we headed towards this sort of tiering approach, and we started to see restrictions on our businesses, and then the kind of Chancellor made announcements about the new schemes to support businesses. They were patently not sufficient, and it's that point that the day after the Chancellor's statement, we wrote, our chairman of C4Mead from the LEP wrote to Rishi Sunak and sort of laid out that, that didn't think that the schemes were going far enough, that that our businesses, particularly those on the front line in hospitality and leisure, that the schemes have been announced would not be sufficient for them. So it's at that point that the local authorities working with the combined authority, working hammer and tongs to try and pull together a scheme that would provide some kind of safety net as much as possible with the resources available. And they're trying to be creative with that the resource that's there, to provide a. And listen, the intention's always been to get that money out of government, and a lot of the to-ing and fro-ing that happened during October was Steve Rotherham and other leaders trying to, prize money out of government to provide support for that stuff. But, we were the first city region in the country to put their own scheme together, because the CA and the local authorities were prepared to say, look, we'll kind of underwrite that. We want to get the money out of government because we think government should be, picking up the tab for this, for those businesses on the front line suffering. But we need to be prepared to underwrite it. And as you say, that has potentially a knock-on for the combined authority funding for the city region for future growth. But you've got, you're in a difficult situation, aren't you? And you said it yourself right at the start of this session. You've got to determine, yes, your aspiration is for growth in the long term, but you won't achieve growth if half of those businesses that you're trying to support don't exist. So some very measured and very difficult decisions have been made. And there may be people on this call who maybe think that the funding hasn't gone far enough. I can say that phenomenal. I'm full of admiration for the officers, the senior officers in the authorities, combined authority, and the politicians who've really, they've spent a huge amount of time trying to pull all this stuff together and get it as right as they can. And they're still in listening mode. There's 2 or 3 meetings take place a week where they go through the finest detail. Are there any businesses or categories of businesses that in any way have been missed out? And you're trying to adjust. It's trying to build on shifting sands, because you created this fund, for businesses, and then the kind of penny dropped with government, and they reintroduced the furlough scheme, because that was the problem. That we knew that the 67% or whatever it was, and the jobbing support scheme was just not enough. So you built a scheme to try and compensate businesses around that. Then the rules changed. So it's had to sort of morph around what national funds are available, because I said earlier on, the amount of funding needed is way beyond, 30, 40 million. We know if this pandemic, we stay in any kind of lockdown, even a tiered lockdown till March, April, is going to be nowhere near enough for our businesses. We know it's at least a factor of 10 or more is going to be necessary for businesses. So this has to be a dialogue with government to get government to pay the money. But I think we should sort of give credit to the politicians and the combined authority for being prepared to underwrite, that with resource it has, access to, even if that means, potentially there may not be the resource in the future, but the hope is obviously that we'll get the money from government and to be able to fund those schemes. But we had, so it was good. We had all sorts of Greater Manchester, Cheshire, all over saying, how you got that money? How come you've been able to run that scheme? Well, the politicians took a bold move, and I think absolutely it was the right one for our business community.
Yeah, and I think, again, just going back to a comment you made earlier, Mark, I think it was the combined authority and others listening to business.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on.
Who were making
spot on, Frank.
That very point, that yeah, these schemes are great, and of course we want to see them happen. But as you rightly say, if there's no businesses here to take advantage of those opportunities, what's the point? So, absolutely the right decision, but very much I've found, and I think this has been one of the more pleasing aspects of the last 7 or 8 months, a real appetite for collaboration, cooperation, and I think a coming together of the private and public sectors that perhaps we've not seen quite as effectively in the past in this part of the world. So it's great to see.
Listen, I agree. I've been a fervent advocate of that partnership approach to things, and the whole point of having a LEP is about trying to ensure that business has a voice into local decision making. And my approach has always been to be absolutely inclusive in that. We need your voice and all of your members voices into that space. Whenever we're doing any sort of consultation, it's giving equal voice to all of those business support groups and anyone working with businesses and individual businesses, to make sure that it's that genuine listening. And I have to say, then work closely with colleagues in the combined authority. they have genuinely listened. We've all been consulted in the past on things where people have decided what they want to do, and then they just feel that they need to get some validation from a business support group. This is genuine, listening, trying to get under the skin of what the problem might be. And I think it gives the people involved a lot of credit that they did genuinely listen. But equally, business stepped up to the plate to say, in a balanced way, these are the problems, this is what we're dealing with, this is the situation, you need something to fix that. So, I lost count of the number of consultation sessions I did one with you, Frank, didn't we, with a bunch of your folks in the sort of early summer, all helped shape what came out. And I was on a call with chief execs last night, and they said that some people are still sniping and saying, oh, we haven't got money for this, or there's not money for that. And, there's a frustration to say, what more can we do? But I said, it's understandable, because some businesses, they're in a really dark place.
Yeah.
You're gonna get that. But I think we've got 95%, pretty much as right as we can in the circumstances. And there's still that appetite to listen. Is there anyone we've missed? Is there anything? What more can we do? Because our approach to this is we design the strategy, the things that we see happen in the next 12 months, 2 years, need to have been co-designed by business. They need to be businesses saying, this is what would make a difference. So, I'm in listening mode all the time to shape the things that are coming. And there's a beauty, I know you're going to come on to devolution, and I think that's why devolution is so important, is that we've got to have the resource locally, because we can then listen to local businesses, to local people, and shape our policies, shape our interventions based on what we know is needed. And the politicians that obviously, do that at a sort of a macro city region level, but we have an infrastructure now that can draw that intelligence and insight from the business community through all of the groups that are out there, and help inform and shape that. And that's what good devolution is about. It's giving everybody a say and an input into the policies and interventions that happen on the ground to affect local businesses and local life. And that's kind of probably my overriding passion, is to make sure that really works.
Just to say to people who are looking in, if you want to put a question to Mark quickly, just put it into the chat room. Alan Cross has, from the space agencies, put a comment in there that we'll come to in a moment. Final point from me, Mark. You mentioned devolution, great segue. You can tell this has been rehearsed, can't you? So you know how much we prepare these things at Downtown, Mark. We produced a manifesto back in June as an organisation. At the very focus of much of that was about the sense of devolving more power, more responsibility, more resource. And we don't do that because it's sort of flavour of the month, or we've had a couple of quick hits and a quick win here and there over the last 8 or 9 months. This is something, as you know, Downtown and Business been advocating for a long time now. But I listened to the themes running through your commentary this morning, Mark. Picking winners, investing in companies, having the ability to react quickly. On the health agenda, look how successful the track and trace and testing systems have been since we set them up as a local authority. So Liverpool City Council driving that. And for me, there has never been a better time for advocating a case for greater devolution, because I think if anything has been proved in the past 7 or 8 months, is that our country is far too centralised, and actually, when given the opportunity, our local authorities, our local politicians, our regional agencies are able to step up to the plate and deliver. And so I think, when we get through this, we really do need to put our shoulder behind getting more powers, responsibilities and combined authorities, because that's the way in which we're going to grow our economies.
Frank, 100% agree with all of that. I think we've seen the pandemic shown just how competent a response is possible. I think there's always been a skepticism within central government, apart from the there's you know, the concern about devolving any kind of power and budgets, you know, is kind of, it doesn't come naturally to folks in power, does it? And you're right that the UK is the most centralised country, absolutely, in Europe, without any question. And we do need that devolution. But what the response of the city region during this pandemic has demonstrated absolutely categorically that we have the competence to deal with things. We have a lot more competence than there's been shown in some other areas, and I'll leave it at that. But really, the response that I've seen, and say, been privileged to have a front row seat and participate in a lot of it. I've been really impressed by the quality of the leadership. Senior executives in the local authorities, and you know, a lot of those folks are, you know, people like Tony Reeves and Mike Harden and others, all of them right across, David Parnholt, right across the piece. Really capable, committed folks, you know, that balance, the need to listen to local residents and work with their politicians, but also with a genuine, you know, understanding of business and the business communities. I think it gives me great hope that we can, with more devolved budgets and more devolved power, really drive that regional growth agenda. Because listen, that's what we need. It's been a bit frustrating that we've seen a leveling off of the devolution. You know, the sort of escalator that we seemed to be on 3 or 4 years ago. But I'm hoping that we've just gone through a period of consolidation, Frank, over the course of the last 6-12 months, but hopefully a useful one where we've demonstrated to government. And listen, you all have, everyone have their views on Boris Johnson, but Boris Johnson's been a mayor. I've been a mayor of London, and he understands devolution, and you know, hopefully, you know, we'll see a reinvigoration of that from government. It's certainly something we, as a LEP, press for, and you know, colleagues that I've on this call will know that we say repeatedly that we welcome more devolution, more control, more budgets, because collectively we know what's needed. We've got 5 years ago, I don't think we'd have responded anywhere near as well to the pandemic as we have in the last 5 years. I think that coming together, that close working, of course, not everything's all, you know, sweetness and light. In any collaboration, you've got tensions, but you know, remarkable and admirable the work that's been done, and it does give us, I think, a fantastic platform for devolution going forward. I can see 2 questions in the chat box, Frank. I don't know if
we'll come on to those, and we can wrap these up actually, I think, as one really, because Alan is basically commenting on the comment you made earlier about, you know, the innovation that's happening within Scientech and the Skytech Ersbury facility, of course, as well. Class Paddington is going to be up and running. So Alan's saying, how do we ensure that everyday businesses in the Liverpool City region understand not just what's going on in these sites, but how they can benefit from them? And then Peter Lawrence from AI Change Management. This is an easy one to finish off. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is perfect, 1 is dysfunctional. How would you describe the effectiveness of the city system in which we operate, and how can we do better? So yeah, an easy one for a Tuesday morning to finish off on.
Let me take Alan's point first. I was chatting to the new boss of the Scientech, well, actually of STFC locally, who are the science part of the Scientech Daresbury site. And interestingly, he's not primarily a scientist. He's a business development specialist, because they've recognised in STFC exactly Alan's point here, that they've got to get this out to. There's a Unilever and Jaguar Land Rover completely get what STFC and big data and AI can do for their businesses. It's that tier below I was talking about, those high growth capacity businesses that aren't as large and don't have the resources. So we've talked already about a plan about how we get this out to all the ordinary businesses out there to make sense of it. And the same applies to what Colin and colleagues are doing at the Hill. So Alan's finger on it, Alan, with that question. Really great point. And it's absolutely in our sights that unless we're able to translate those things and make them relevant to businesses, we won't drive the productivity and enable businesses to take advantage of them. So maybe, there's something we could do collaboratively, Frank. For a future event is bringing the kind of the science and those high capability opportunities to businesses and how to get them involved. Happy to do something on that, because I think it's really important. On a scale of 1 to 10, I think we're between 6 and 7. I think we're doing a lot better than we were. My ambition's 10. I think I think devolution will help us to get higher. We need more control over things. To some extent, we have control over some, but an awful lot of our initiatives we take, whether they're European programs, which have all sorts of rules and what have you, we don't have as much freedom and as control. So we're trying to make the best of. In some respects, I think the model you talked about, where we look to other areas who may do better or we may proceed to do better. And I often compare us with Greater Manchester, who have had a huge amount of money in their business support system, but it's a very centralized system. Everyone, it's all through, the growth company. We've never wanted to operate like that. We've always preferred this distributed model where you tie it as an ecosystem together and recognize and support organizations like yours and chambers and others, and recognize they've all got a valid role to do, but join up. So there's two competing models there. I think we've done well in having that model. It allows us to reach, a large number of businesses. I just want to improve the quality of what's delivered and the focus around growth and growth businesses to drive our economy forward, and what's my simplify the system for the universal service. So still plenty of room for improvement, but we've probably gone up from a 5 to pretty much a 7 over the course of the last couple of years. I'm hoping to get up to a 9 by this time next year. So please hold me to account to that, because that's what I'm here for.
And that's an ambitious target to set. Mark, it's been great to speak to you. I won't ask you for your mark between 1 and 10 for Everton. A few weeks ago, it would have been 10. We're probably drifting towards that 5 again, but hopefully Carlo will get it right at the weekend. And just to chip in on that, I would say a solid 7. But I think more importantly, Mark, the point that you made earlier, 4 or 5 years ago, we'd have been scraping a 4. And I think what that demonstrates is the progress that's been made in Liverpool City region during that time. And unquestionably, the Local Enterprise Partnership has played a big part in contributing to that. Hopefully we have as well.
Yeah, definitely.
As you say, Mark, it's the leadership that has really mattered and made a difference. And I think, we've seen that in spades over the last 8 months, and long may that continue.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for the opportunity. Frank, I hugely value our partnership with Downtown. I think the stuff you do is great, and that's like this point about having, we're not trying to be all things to all people. We recognise the fantastic talents and creativity and entrepreneurship that exists, and you're a great example of that. So, long may that diversity and thrive. And our job is to try and bring all of those parties together and make it work as a complete ecosystem. So really value the partnership with Downtown, and listen, anything we can do to support you, just you or your members, just let us know. We'll do what we can.
Lovely. Thanks for joining us in the Downtown Den today, Mark. Hopefully see you face to face very soon.
Yes.
And thanks for everybody who's joined today. Thanks for the questions from Peter and Alan.